Hello everyone, this is Milan jeftic 1982 here, with my farewell video. First off, I would just like to say that I had a lot of fun, you guys. I loved the whole ride. I had a great time. But I didn't really think that I would be voted off on this particular video, because you can't just review H.P. Lovecraft. You can't just review H.P. Lovecraft. You've got to be as weird and unusual and unorthodox as you possibly can. You can't just review H.P. Lovecraft. But I guess, what I was going for didn't really translate well. But still, I could see, I can understand why you guys would choose to vote me off this year for the video that I made. It was not my best. Well, visually it was my best, but yeah, I gotta work on my reviewing skills more. I'm more of a storyteller than a reviewer, actually. But I would say there are no hard feelings, but I shall have my revenge. Indeed. We all shall.
Hello everyone, I'm Captain Logan, and welcome once again to Who Reviews the Reviewers. It's round 5. We're down to the final 4, and let me introduce my amazing co-host. He just destroyed the Death Star and dealt a major blow to the Galactic Empire. It's Vince!
Yeah, I like killing things, apparently. Hooah!
And he just blew up Dr. Robotnik's death egg and saved a bunch of woodland creatures from being enslaved. It's the Review Spot!
Yes! What?
And finally, he just dropped King Koopa in some lava and was told his princess is in another castle. It's Mr. Fusion!
I beat Super Mario Sunshine today, and God, that game's annoying.
Did you do that today?
Yes.
He started playing it when it came out. He just finished it.
Wouldn't be surprised. God, there's so much stuff to do in that game. Coins.
Well, unfortunately, Manos wasn't able to make it with us tonight due to personal commitments, but he's given me his vote off in Top Banana, so he will be contributing. Hopefully we'll see him again next time. Once again, let me mention the prizes. The winner finally will win a $100 gift card to Amazon.com. They'll get to do a podcast, hopefully with me and Vince, and also hopefully a review with all of the contest judges. Last time we unfortunately had to vote off Milan jeftic 1992, who has been doing some fantastic work, and we wish him all the best. Also, he's working with me, quick plug, on an upcoming comic book project, so look forward to that in the coming months. And the challenge for this week was to review something that one of the judges has reviewed. This is about separating yourself from other reviewers and tackling topics that other, more well-established reviewers may have done before and a lot of viewers are familiar with. I know this is something that I've had to deal with a lot of the time. I'm sure some of you guys have had to deal with it too. I thought it would be a really interesting thing to make a challenge about. And let's go ahead and jump right into it. Our first contestant that we're going to talk about today is SXE Blues, who did probably the most meta thing anybody's ever done in Who Reviews the Reviewers. He reviewed my Batman Begins review, which was previously reviewed by Mr. Fusion from last year's Who Reviews the Reviewers.
Mr. Blues, it has come to our attention that a reviewer on YouTube, one Captain Logan of the YouTube channel Geekvolution, has made it his mission to review every superhero movie ever made. And to this point, his analyses have remained unchallenged, with the exception of fellow reviewer Mr. Fusion, though current information suggests these two are now working in collusion. Your mission, Mr. Blues, should you choose to accept it, is to review an entry in the series Superhero Rewind, and see whether or not it is truly impenetrable. Best of luck.
and we're going to start the deliberations this time with none other than Mr. Fusion.
I kept finding myself so confused during trying to keep track of what it was he was actually reviewing.
It was like Inception.
Yeah, a review within a review based on a review. There was a review somewhere in there, and so
I had trouble figuring out what Inception was reviewing. Sorry.
Yeah, and so I mean that's not any kind of necessarily a negative critique on him. It's just I had to sort of have a spreadsheet of my own to try to figure out if it was the review or the movie he was doing, and to make sure that he kept on track of which one he was doing.
To be fair, Fusion, you started all of this.
I did.
Like, it's pretty much your fault, right?
I mean, like, got a finger point, but
wait, but you gave me the assignment to do that in the first place.
No, I'm talking about then at the end of last year's contest when it was your idea to have everybody review the contest itself.
Well,
I mean, like.
Yeah, but no one reviewed that yet.
Oh, that's a good point. See, I wish you had picked that. That would have been great.
That would have been amazing. Although, also would have been like a 25-minute long video.
Oh, that's true, because you could have only been 2 minutes away. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
What I liked about the very beginning of this is that SXE Blues is playing the game now. I mean, he really had fun with this one. Really had with that whole Mission Impossible parody thing. So it wasn't just. I guess like the one complaint I've had about SXE Blues is that he doesn't have. I had a hard time keeping my interest at first, but especially now, he's become much more brought in a lot of the entertainment factor more than he had before, and just bringing in that opening and ending sort of bookends with that idea of why he'd be doing this review. It really helped sell it for me. And just putting that humor in there gave it the extra flourish that he had been lacking before. But this is actually a very, very highly critical review, more so than I thought. He had a lot of high praise for the Superhero Rewind, but I don't know, it's like a big chunk of that was stuff he wished had been done better. He really didn't pull any punches on that.
I had no idea how much it sucked. I had no idea.
Yeah, it's like, I watched mine and his back to back. Yeah, I did all that for all the videos. Watched the original and watched the new one, and it's like, wow, he really laid in there a lot more than I did. And he, I did. One thing I really remembered noticing is that there was that one spot where he talked about the audio on your video and how it sort of jumped to that one spot, and I thought it was really funny because I'd actually used not just snippets of audio in mine. I sort of had it underlaying the entire time. I remember Vince in particular didn't like that, and I agree with him when I look back.
Yeah, I didn't like it either. It was hard to listen to.
Hey, this is not about me. This is about.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot who we were reviewing. Excuse me.
Yeah.
It's very complicated. Yeah.
Who are you reviewing?
Boy, I'm glad I'm not going next, because I would have just spent the whole time talking about Fusion. I apologize.
So yeah, I thought that was funny that he had a better use of using your audio than I did of using but not using your audio. I guess the one thing I had a problem with, and that actually worked really well for the most part, is I think he used his own screen grabs from Batman Begins, which it looked really awesome, were awesome choices as well. But when he went into you about the improperly scaled images, those seemed like those were his own as well, and they actually seemed a little more exaggerated than what you did when you did that video. That seemed a little bit.
I thought so too. Yeah.
That seems slightly unfair. I mean, I hate to say that because I criticized that as well when I did that, but to be fair, it seemed like his was not quite an accurate representation of what that was. And I was disappointed at the end that the whole Mission Impossible thing sort of seemed kind of open-ended. I kind of wish if it had just been an opening sequence and didn't really have a follow-up, I wouldn't have noticed. But since it was an ending sequence and just like, oh, we'll review this and get like, unless that's going to be like a shtick of his from now on, where he's going to sort of pick that thread up later on, it just seems sort of, oh, well, okay, that sort of ended now. But in general, I thought it was really thorough review, and I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Go ahead, Vince.
I really like SXE Blues' ability to understand things. I mean, I find it to be hope for the future that people can pick things out of a movie or a script or whatever they happen to be, experiencing and just thoroughly get it. And, I really appreciate that about SXE Blues. Now, some other things. Mission Impossible was fun. I didn't really have a problem with it. I kind of felt like he was toying with a potential shtick, but I didn't necessarily think that it needs to stick around. So I applaud him for having the bravery to try it. I think that it's almost more funny since he has this sort of low-key, deadpan-ish delivery. I think if he'd have done it right there at the very beginning of the competition, I would have sort of looked at him like, I don't think you can do what you're trying to do. But now that I've seen what he does, what he can do, I'm thinking, maybe that seems really harsh, but now that I've seen what he does and what he can do, I think, man, here's a guy who is playing to his strengths in sort of a thinking outside of the box way. So I like how he gives credit to to both of you guys, both of the two reviewers that came before him, and he makes his own observations. I think it's kind of brave to take on something that two judges have judged before. And,
I love how you said that we were in collusion. I love that.
That was great. Yeah, I was going to mention that too.
Yeah. I think it's initially I kind of got lost, like Fusion said. I started wondering whether or not he was actually reviewing the reviews or if he was reviewing the movie, which was what the competition was about, was reviewing the thing that the judges reviewed, not the reviews themselves. So initially I thought that way, and I thought, man, I don't know that he's making a thorough video, but I don't think he's thoroughly satisfying this particular competition.
No, why is that, Vince? He wasn't picking something based on me. He was picking something based on Fusion.
Yeah, well, here's the deal. I'm saying that if he's reviewing reviews, he's not reviewing the thing that was reviewed as much as he was reviewing.
No, he is, because he was reviewing something Fusion reviewed. See, he was reviewing my review, which Fusion reviewed last week. See the thing? That somebody else got Geekvolution. He got Fusion.
Which level of the dream are we on right now?
Oh, man. I did get lost.
I was afraid that might happen to somebody. Yeah, it's a little bit confusing, but yeah, somebody else got Geekvolution. He got Fusion, and so he picked that.
I got you. Okay.
So see, I'm the subject that was being reviewed in the first place.
I got it. So let me say this instead. Ixnay, those comments there. I found it interesting how academic it seemed that he was playing it. This is actually in my notes. I wrote this beforehand. So I found it interesting how academic it was to play two reviewers' opinions against each other. And that's how you write a paper. I mean, you have two supposed experts who, this guy had this to say about Faust, and that lady had something to say about Faust, and they're experts. Now let's write a paper on it. And that's what he did, and I found that really interesting. So I remove all previously said comments about what he was actually reviewing because he satisfied the requirement. I just assumed that both of you guys had reviewed that movie. Whew. Anyway.
No, it was certainly confusing at first. Yeah. The thing is, he asked me about it ahead of time because he wanted to make sure that it was okay, and I had to get my mind around all of that before I even saw it. It was me sitting there going, okay, now is somebody else doing Geekvolution? How's this? Okay, now I get it. So yeah, it took me a while too. So as I was, I'm gonna go and go now. As I was watching this, I didn't have the same problem that either of you guys had in being lost in what was being reviewed, just because I'd already had to figure all that out ahead of time so that I could tell him if it was okay for him to do it. I really like the premise of the Mission Impossible thing. I agree with Fusion that I'm not sure there was enough of a payoff for it, but what I liked about it was that it helped kind of ease people into the oddness of it, where he didn't just start right off, okay, I'm going to review this review that somebody else did, blah, 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 blah. What? Why? And so it was. I really like the premise of someone else is making me do this. I thought that was very clever, and he did it completely unapologetically. what I loved about it from the moment that he suggested this as a topic, when he asked me if he could do it, to actually putting it together and making it, it was clear from the very beginning to me that he knew just what he wanted to do with this. And in my head, I was like, that sounds like quite the risk. I mean, it sounds like a really complicated thing to do. And he's putting me and Fusion on the spot at the same time. I was like, I'm not sure this is smart. And he had the same kind of confidence in the video as he did when he originally asked about it, and I was very impressed with it. I liked how critical it was, and I was the subject. I love it. I mean, like, I agree with pretty much everything he said. How did I not talk about Bruce killing Joe Chill? That had everything to do with what I was talking about in that review, and he's completely right about it. I was very impressed. One of the things I really liked was that he would take a point that Fusion had, and then he would say, okay, Fusion said this, and then he would build on it. He said he was talking about how the review should have talked more about the supporting characters, which Fusion mentioned, and then he had more to say about it. I like that he would give Fusion credit for something Fusion said, and then build on it. So it wasn't just, okay, I'm going to say this thing and then do more stuff on it, but I'm going to pretend like I came up with it in the first place. I really appreciated that. I also like, though, that he didn't call back too much to Fusion's review either, because that wasn't the challenge. Mm-hmm. You know, it wasn't about talking about the other person's review, but he did just what I was hoping folks would do with this, which is give credit where credit is due. And I felt the need not to come out and say that, because I wanted to see if people would figure that out on their own, you know, where they're having to look at these other reviews before they do this one. And so the question is, at what point do you talk about the other person's review just to give them credit, and at what point do you just leave that completely alone? Because after all, some things you're going to come up with on your own, because it's just, you know, obvious you're going to talk about it. Like later on, we'll talk about Zazar, who was talking about, you know, the music of Batman Beyond Return of the Joker, and he didn't feel the need to come out and say, you know, Captain Logan talked about the music, because, you know, that's a pretty major thing you talk about. There's no reason you have to mention the other reviewer there. So I like that he had a good handle on that. I really didn't have any problems with it. I was really impressed with the organization. I thought it was really fair. I thought it was unbiased. I thought it was objective. I liked that like Fusion said, a lot of it was criticism, and then it was bookended with praise. You know, it was like, I like this about it. These parts were bad, and then at the end, and I like these things about it. And that was a very good way to frame it. And I also wanted to say thanks to XXE Blues for the compliment that my review was worth multiple views. I thought that was the nicest thing anybody's ever said to me, and I really appreciated that. Go ahead, Spot.
I kind of sit in the way of being in the middle of all this. You know, on one end we have Vince and we have Lance that have commented on points, and then Logan has made some valid points as well. But while I did enjoy his review, I found that I was spending more time trying to establish what he was doing than I was actually watching the review. I don't want to say like the content of what the review was, because at the end of the day, like Captain was saying, the review was of him rather than necessarily of Batman Begins, and so therefore his dissection is not so much of Batman Begins, but more so of who initially reviewed it. But I think the biggest problem, though, is, and it could have just been the fact that I had watched the other challenges first, that the other challenges pretty much stuck to the core material. It would have been helpful, and I'll probably discuss it later with the other videos, that they had made some inclusion of some reference point to where the source of their review came from, that I was reviewing something that somebody else had done. But it was a very open-ended, like with their other reviews, like you could go into it and you were watching the material at hand. I found with SXE Blues, it wasn't so much that I was getting confused by it, but I wish he had. I don't want to say it like it's a fault, but I think having picked something that seemed to me more as novelty than rather review than the review. I think he should have picked something that Mr. Fusion had done on his own and critiqued that rather than critiquing something that he had critiqued of somebody else. Because I thought I don't know. I'm really torn, because this is some of his best material. I really liked I really like the.
So you mostly just had a problem with the choice.
I really had a big problem with the choice. I liked the opener. The ending, I have to agree with Lance that the ending, I didn't like the direction that it went. Because, it should have counted down. I would have been happy with some sort of, dissolve or something happening to the video where it looked like the video had self-destructed and there was no payoff at the end. His narrative was very strong. In fact, I wanted to comment, and I'm talking along in this one, but his narrative is some of the strongest that he's done in any challenge. He's very clear. The audio of his material is done very well, but I think I was going into it watching it more as a novelty review than a review itself. And I think it's almost to his hindrance, the fact that he didn't pick something that was a review on its own, that he could have dissected the material rather not dissection of a dissection, if that makes any sense.
Well, I guess I guess this gets really interesting, Spot,
really
because I'm kind of glad that it happened though, because it gives us something really interesting to talk about, and maybe we should for a second. I guess the question that is a review or a critical analysis a fair topic for review?
I don't think it is.
Wow.
And that's just my personal
opinion.
All
right.
I disagree.
I'm not sure I agree with that, but I see where you're coming from.
It would be like if you went into a restaurant and you went up to somebody and you said, you know what, I really feel like a steak, but instead of actually having the steak, I'm going to go up to somebody that's eaten the steak and I'm going to ask them. And it just seems to me like it was a very creative approach, and I have to commend him completely for approaching it in something that he took something completely out of the box, and this is something that I was really impressed with. But I think, I don't know, it just didn't work for me. I just felt like I was spending more time getting less interested in the actual content of Batman Begins, that I was spending more time trying to figure, okay, he's now critiquing Lance's critique of Captain Logan, that I became, I was pulled away from the content of Batman Begins, and I wanted to spend more time on Batman Begins than a critique of a critique. And again, that's just me, so I don't...
Yeah, what's really interesting is the genesis of this series came out of my love for literary analysis. And you can literarily analyze anything that has story in it. You can also, when we're talking about reviewing, critically analyze pretty much anything. But what's interesting is, I guess I was just kind of while you were talking, I was thinking about like analyses I've read of literature. I did a lot of that in college, and I wrote a lot of literary analysis in college. And what you'd see quite often would be an analysis of a work. And then somebody would cite somebody else's talk of the same work, but they would still be talking about the work. You know what I mean? You never see an analysis of somebody else's analysis where that's all it was, right? And so they would say, well, I agree with say, I'll just throw out a random name. I agree with, say, Mr. Hodges on these particular points, which goes into what I'm talking about, but I don't agree with Mr. Hodges on these particular points. Spot, I totally see where you're coming from. This is not something you usually see, and I'm not sure that it's something that people outside of this contest would generally click on. And that's a question.
And a point also, too, that and it's maybe just the way I misunderstood the contest itself. Like this particular challenge, I thought the challenge was review something that somebody else has reviewed. So, like, going into it, I was more or less, I wanted to really separate this person's challenge from the original content, so that I wasn't comparing the two, that I could kind of look at it and say, okay, I like what they've done with it, and maybe watch the original review afterwards.
But once again, to be fair, he still did that.
True, but I couldn't do that with, say if I was somebody that hadn't seen your review or Lance's review, and I had gone solely into his with a clean plate, I would have been completely lost, really, with the comparisons that he was doing, because it was such a outside-of-the-box idea.
I can see where you get off calling it novelty when you put it like that.
Yeah, and like, I don't want to... I know I've talked a little too long about this, but I really don't want to.
Okay. I think it's very interesting.
I really don't want to say that he did wrong by his choice, because by doing the choice that he did shows a level of imagination and creativity that perhaps maybe the other reviewers wouldn't have thought of. But I think in the same tone, he almost sacrificed his own reviewing style for the fact that the novelty of it came first and foremost.
That's interesting.
I still have to say though that it's the most critical thing he's done.
I would totally agree with you. And
You know, the thing is, it was such a risk. It could have been awful. That's what's really interesting about it. And it wasn't. It's amazing that he really had that much to say about it.
yeah.
If I can step in for just a second, the one thing I was worried about was that he would fall into the trap of himself not realizing what he was doing, and I could just I could see him turning this into a review of Batman Begins, is like he was just sort of bringing in a middleman and say, I want to review Batman Begins, but I have Mr. Fusion, he didn't do Batman Begins, so I'm just going to use him to springboard into that topic.
He was in complete control.
Yeah, it's like every single time I thought, oh, he's starting to get into the movie, he would bring it back to the review, and I was like, okay, that wasn't what I thought it was going to be. He actually is staying on topic here. He's not forgetting what he's doing.
Lance, do you think part of the reason he made the choice was because it wasn't something he had to go out and buy?
I'm not sure. I mean, honestly, just how well versed he seems in Batman, I would be surprised if he didn't own the movie.
I thought.
Well, that's true, but he would have had to have gotten Geekvolution in the first place. What I'm saying is they decided who was going to review what, and he got Fusion. And I just wonder if part of it was, well, I got Fusion and I don't have anything Fusion has, so I have to.
Right, yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
That's exactly what I was thinking.
It was something he didn't have to go out and get. Anybody could have reviewed that because you don't have to buy it. It's just a review on the internet.
Yeah. I did wonder about that too, and I admit there was a little part of my ego that was disappointed that he wasn't directly choosing something I had done, but I got over that.
Like I didn't want to point that out, but it did feel to me like he thought to himself, okay, well, I'll pick Lance, but there wasn't really anything Lance that I wanted to do. I really wanted to do Geekvolution, so I piggybacked one judge to get to use another judge, and that's maybe why I had maybe a tough time with it.
Well, who knows? I'm not giving him a huge strike for it. It could be that for whatever reason he just really, really, really wanted to talk about that too. I mean, who knows?
Yeah, I would give him points for absolutely thinking outside the box, and all the credit is, I think, it could be given to him for thinking outside the box.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would disagree with Lance's initial point that he's playing the game. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in some cases better than the others for the choice that he went with.
I agree. I will say, even though we haven't talked about any of the others yet, I thought it was the most creative thing.
It was a good risk, I think it was.
All right, well, let's go ahead and go on then to DPSDQ2's review of Pretzel M&Ms and some other M&Ms. The Pretzel M&Ms were previously reviewed by The Review Spot.
Before we start, let me remind you about the details about this review. This review is based off the Review Spot's review of Pretzel M&Ms, although I am incorporating all these other M&Ms here. And also, I'm using the Review Spot's review as a guideline. And what's interesting about the Review Spot's review that I found was when he was talking about the Pretzel M&Ms, he brought up three factors, or three pillars, if you will, about how an M&M works as an M&M. Although he didn't specifically state these three facts, because his review was more of an overall review, it was in the context of his review. And so I decided to pick out those factors, and what those three factors happen to be are presentation and art, the context and taste and texture of the actual M&M as candy, and the third thing, which I find the most interesting, is a kind of social status look at M&Ms.
And we're going to start, once again, of course, with Lance Fusion.
This one...
Lance Fusion.
In my rocket ship?
In his rocket ship.
Yeah. I'll review things in my rocket ship. All right, M&Ms. This one was interesting in the fact that it was very, very much different from Review Spots. I mean, it did a different direction. It almost could have been retitled just M&Ms in general. It didn't really stick with just Pretzel M&Ms. It was Pretzel M&Ms and their family or whatever. I can't recall exactly what he called it. And it's hard to fault him for sort of going beyond or having more than just what than what Review Spot did. Although, it was kind of close for me because he almost seemed to go a bit too far outside the time limit. And it seems like if he could have just focused focused on just the subject matter that ReviewSpot did, then you might not have had that time issue, and you might have been more well focused than it ended up being. I liked his little opening animation with the M&Ms. That was cute and creative. The one problem I had with that is that because of the fact that he split review into 2 words on 2 different lines, I wasn't sure what he was writing the first time I saw it, so I had to go back and figure out that okay, it says review. So I still have to give him props for taking just pretzel M&Ms and making it into a whole line of M&Ms thing, but it did seem to get sort of watered down because of the fact he didn't focus on just one thing. There was still a little bit of the I guess enunciation problem. It was kind of weird. Like he would say the word blend, especially in regards to the coconut. It sounded like he was saying bland. Although in a way that kind of worked, because I remember in ReviewSpot's original review, bland was kind of his operative word for pretzel M&Ms. So
they were pretty bland, by the way.
It's like I'm eating some right now.
It's like filled with sawdust.
I never thought about it, but you're not wrong.
I've never actually had a pretzel M&M before. It doesn't seem like I'm missing that much. Although
You like sawdust?
not
like
generally.
Unsweetened Gobstopper or Whopper, whatever they're called.
Whoppers are good though.
Whoppers are really
great.
good, but these are nothing like Whoppers.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll eat Whoppers then.
I thought it was really funny that the pretzel M&M actually fell apart in his hand when he was holding it. Like the shell just fell completely off. I don't know that doesn't really have much to do with the review, I guess. But I mean, it doesn't really bother me that he didn't do a retake of that. But it was just kind of funny. It shattered, and he was holding a pretzel, whatever.
You should have talked about that. This is why they're bad.
They fall apart. Yeah. What was I going to say? There was this part in the video where he talks about, I guess, the milk chocolate M&Ms and talks about the this trick you can do, but putting it in water and things like that, and then it just sort of ends. I was like, okay, are we going to see that? Are you going to show what that does, what kind of effect that has? And it's like, oh, this can do this, and I wasn't even entirely sure what exactly that did, and I really wish that he had gone more. Granted that he was already too close on time as it was, but I mean, again, I think that if he had been a bit more focused, it would have allowed him to do more creative things like that. Although I did find it interesting. I mean, it's good to see it wasn't just sort of a restating of ReviewSpot's. He did seem to have a complete opposite opinion of the pretzel ones than ReviewSpot did. He thought that the chocolate overpowered the pretzel, while ReviewSpot seemed to think the pretzel was just there and bland. So at least it wasn't just this is what ReviewSpot said, and I agree at the end. So I'm of mixed minds of this one. I think there's some good spots in it, but I think it could have been more focused.
There's some things I liked about this review. I mean, I liked that he used a pencil as a pointer. I liked that he used shadow as a pointer. So visually, there were things happening on screen that was not just a plate sitting there, although that was largely what the review was. So he managed to use some common surroundings to help himself out, and I thought that was visually interesting. I think he's okay off the cuff, but I think his strength is in scripting. And to some extent, I wonder if he tried it because he was trying to play the game, or if he just misunderstood the idea of the competition. Part of me thinks that he was thinking that he had to review in the style of Who Reviews the Reviewer, or the Review Spot. Of that
That's
guy.
a really good point. If you had to review in the style of Who Reviews the Reviewer, you would have had to get 4 more guys.
Just like him. Anyway. So I couldn't decide whether he was trying something different. At first I thought it was brave, and then I thought, well, maybe he misunderstood, because the point is that you're supposed to review something that, in this case, ReviewSpot reviewed, and make it your own. Say something about it that he didn't say, and don't take credit for stuff that he said. But it's so. Let me say this. I felt like he was a little long-winded. As Lance said, he was unfocused. And I think that's part of because he seems to have very little confidence off the cuff. I mean, he tries to – I feel like he's trying to be very professional, which is okay. I can applaud that. But to some extent, he does not – there are certain things that he just doesn't have necessarily an affinity for. Like he kept saying more thicker or more thinner, and that's grammatically incorrect. So, and there's nothing wrong with that, or there's nothing wrong with using colloquialisms and things like that. But I found it grating, and I found it like I really felt like he should have gone scripted. And so, sometimes we try things, and it's okay to try things that you haven't tried before. But sometimes it is shooting yourself in the foot. So that's why they call it a risk. I think it's okay that he based his review on spots. I think that's fair. But to some extent, and his construction of his review, but to some extent, I felt like he was still thinking that he needed to reproduce the review that happened beforehand with a couple of his own thoughts. So I'll admit I have not watched Spot's review. Sorry, Spot.
That's all right.
I should have asked you guys to do that. I was going to have everybody watch both, and I forgot to mention that, but that's all right.
But so that's kind of where I was.
You should though, because it's the funniest thing he ever did. It really is one of Spot's funniest reviews.
I wouldn't say that. I've done funnier.
Well, for my money, I thought it was really funny. But anyway.
But yeah, I guess the point is that I didn't feel like he forged enough of his own path, and I feel like he has proven that he has capability and that he has some strengths. I just don't think he played to those strengths.
I agree with everything you guys both said. I thought he seemed really uncomfortable doing this. It very much came off like he was trying. I mean, he was really doing his best to do a review of something he hadn't done before. He's done almost nothing but narrative stuff before. He did the popcorn at the beginning when we asked him to do food, and I thought he seemed pretty uncomfortable there also. So it's this kind of unfortunate thing where he's taking some risks. But a lot of them aren't really working, and it's really unfortunate. I thought that I agree with Vince. I think he's better scripted. Although I will say that I think I made the point last time that he should try off the cuff sometime just to see how he did. So I'm glad that he did it. It wasn't awful. I just thought that like Vince, I had some problems with some of the way that he worded things, that he might not have had the same problem when he scripted. He continually said pacifically instead of specifically. That it's unfortunate. It's just grammatically incorrect. That's not the word you're looking for. There were some things that he said that I thought that he was stating the obvious a bit too much. I thought that he was approaching it too much like he would approach a narrative, where it was like, I just thought his approach was off. It was like, okay, it wasn't like I'm reviewing something everybody knows about, like most people probably would. It was very much, I'm going to go nitty-gritty, explain everything, and make the assumption that no one knows what I'm talking about. I think that was not the way to go on this. I thought that there was a bit too much stating the obvious. And then he said a couple things here and there that I'm just not sure I agreed with, which, I mean, like, again, that's not a problem, of course. You're not going to agree with everything, but I thought that he made some points that I was a little surprised by, like that the color on the regular M&M bag made it unappealing because it's brown. I mean, Hershey's gotten away with that for years. Like, I was kind of surprised by that point. It's chocolate. Like, that's the color it is because you're eating chocolate. I was a little surprised by that point.
Representative of personal bias.
What's that?
Said it's kind of a representation of personal bias.
Yeah, sure. I'm with Fusion. I loved his intro. I thought that was cool. I would have liked a little bit more of that tone throughout the review, kind of the fun, happy. I'm reviewing candy. you know, candy's fun. I thought that showing the insides of the M&Ms was a good idea. He was trying to do some things that were a little bit different than what Spot did. What else did I want to say? I wasn't real keen on the idea that he felt the need to change the subject, because Spot reviewed pretzel M&Ms. And again, this is just one of those challenge rule kind of things. But Spot reviewed pretzel M&Ms. I felt like he was afraid that he couldn't fill the time, so he added more. He didn't review what Spot reviewed. He reviewed M&Ms in general, like Fusion said. And then I thought it was strange that having to fill time, like again, I could be wrong about this, but like I said, I felt like he added those things because he wasn't sure how he was going to get the amount of time. I think Spot's review was maybe 7 minutes. It was like, how am I going to get 7 minutes out of it? Or maybe it was even shorter than that. I think it was maybe even shorter than that. And then it ended up being quite a bit longer than Spot's review. The challenge was for it to be no more or less than 2 minutes. Longer or shorter than the initial review, and I think his clocked in at 3.5 minutes longer, I think is what I wrote down. So So anyway, I was really surprised by that. I think honestly, he would have been okay just doing the pretzel M&Ms, considering how long the thing actually ended up being. I mean, I like that that in doing, the 4, he went one by one, and he had good things to say. I'm just not sure that it was, for my money, it just wasn't entertaining enough. Honestly, and being what it was, reviewing M&Ms, I think that you've got to, if you can, you've got to fall back on being as entertaining as you can, because you're not talking about something that's extremely exciting all on its own. That's the problem with it. So yeah, I feel like the approach was wrong. I feel like I'm being really harsh on him, because like I said, he was trying something different. I just don't think it quite worked. Go ahead, Spot.
It's really hard to be a judge of a contest entry that's based on a review that you have done,
isn't it? Because
you're then critiquing somebody who's done your video, and you're almost by critiquing it, you're almost saying in so many words, mine was the norm and you did not do it like mine, so this is what I find fault with it. And I really don't want to do that.
Well, and like, remember, of course, that one of the things we said when we brought up the challenge in the first place was it doesn't have to be as good as the original. We did say that.
Yeah, and like, well, I mean, for starters, for positive points, I mean, I really liked the intro. And I liked it so much that I even thought the whole time I was watching them, I'm thinking, wow, I would really love to steal this and just use it for my own shtick, because I liked it. It kind of had this whimsical, like it was already mentioned, a very whimsical kind of Candyland, kind of almost like a commercial, and it seemed like when I started watching it, I felt very strongly that the pacing and the tone of the rest of the review was going to be along those same lines. And then it seemed to abruptly drop off from the point that he started doing the review. I mean, I would go as far to say, like, when he started even talking about the packaging, it started relatively well. But, I mean, as a point that was already made, and it's hard for me to say because, again, like I'm comparing it to my video, but like if you're going to review like pretzel M&Ms, I would find a way to change the focus and the material of what you're saying for that specific item, but I wouldn't add any new product to it because then you're not really, to me that seems like you're incorporating additional crutches because you don't have enough material for the specified object. And it just seemed to me like when it got to the point when he had the candy on a paper plate, it really felt, I really don't want to say this, but it really felt amateur to me. And I would think that if you're reviewing product should never leave the package until the point that you're trying it, because the moment anything leaves the package, you completely have separated the viewer from whatever they're watching. And I always joke in the video when I do reviews of food, I always kind of jokingly say that I put the package in the background, and I would say product placement is key. It is really key because, if you take a candy out of a bag and you just put it on a plate and it's just a round ball, that could really be anything. That could be cat food. That could be, something you found on the ground. And it
I'm totally going to feed M&Ms to my cat.
I really wouldn't.
I don't have a cat.
Gas is pretty bad. But
can I ask you a question with that?
Absolutely.
I had never heard that before, but now that I'm thinking about it, I think you're absolutely right. Would it have been more effective had it been? And again, this is nothing against the review because you can't help your limitations with what kind of technology you have sometimes. But would it have been maybe more effective had he been able to zoom in on it and had a really clear lens?
Well, exactly. Or what I would have said was
because it was pretty blurry. It was hard to look at.
Yeah, and when you're reviewing food, I always find that the key element is to have a very singular color, a neutral background. Even if he had set up like a cloth or something and had the camera like literally right up against the food he was reviewing, the fact that it was panned so far back, it did feel as if he just finished his lunch and he basically started his review of whatever was left on his plate. And I know that's such a harsh critique.
You're not wrong. I did feel that way.
I thought with what he did with it, the material was good in the fact that what he was talking about with the other M&Ms, but I don't know. I mean, to take one item, you can easily expand on it. Like, had he taken the M&M package and he had said, like, I do that a lot in my videos, like, if there's not enough material, I make up a lot of crap. Like, he could have easily said, you know, I always liked this color of blue that's on the package. Yes, it reminds me of the time when I was younger and I had a blue jacket like this, and there was this girl in public school and I always wanted to ask out, and she never wanted to come see me, and I thought, okay, if I pulled her hair, you know, the idea is you're not necessarily
See, that works great with your reviews. I'm not sure it would have worked so good in the contest.
True, but for me, like, it seems like
Vince would have been like, "What does that have to do with anything?"
Yeah, exactly, and that's the point. But I mean, like, you can always find a way to beef up a review, and it felt to me like he didn't try to venture off to incorporate more into the one item, that he tried to incorporate so much more with other things to fill out the review for him. And it just seemed to me like it wasn't as successful as maybe what it could have been.
I meant to mention this earlier. My wife had what I thought was a really good suggestion about that. She said if you wanted to be really in depth about M&Ms, and again, this is not my point, this is my wife's point. If you wanted to be really in depth about M&Ms, why not give us a little bit of background? Why not some history? You know,
exactly.
That's
really surprised that was like absent.
Wouldn't and that wouldn't be too hard to find. You know, you could do pretty much just a basic wiki search, and so he could have told us a little bit about like when each of the M&Ms came out in the first place. And I'd like to know when and how peanut M&Ms started, because they've been around forever, and I don't know how long after the original M&Ms they happened. He could have even talked about the original genesis of M&Ms in the first place, and how they were candies that were meant for soldiers out in wars. I think they started in it was either Vietnam, or I think it was maybe Vietnam but maybe it was before that, where originally they were created so that soldiers would have something to munch on that wouldn't melt. That was the whole idea. And or at least that's what my dad always told me. I'll have to look that up and see if it's actually true, but I think it is anyway. But I'm just saying he could have beefed it up with some actual information, and that would have been stuff that we would have. Oh, cool! I didn't know that. That's good to know.
And yeah, you bring up a very valid point, because that's something that I never incorporate at all in my videos. That background material, he could have easily stretched that review by trimming out what he didn't need, and by incorporating the background to the product. He could have easily incorporated another 2.5 minutes easily into the video. It just,
and we would have said, hey, cool, even something Spot would never even thought to do. Yeah,
exactly. And I would have said, you know what, all the power to you. I'm really glad that you provided the more informative end of it, where I always try to just, you know, I just try to do like a lot of fluff, really, and more so my thoughts rather than any real factual information behind the, background on it.
Lance tells me that M&Ms have been around since 1941. Thank you. I thought they were later than that.
Not a problem. Just did a wiki search, so I guess it can be done, I guess.
Okay, awesome. Do you have any more points?
The Candyman can.
That's a good point.
The Candyman can, actually. I've spoken to him recently.
I like that he said how he eats M&Ms. I thought that was interesting. I mean, it's not just, hey, I chomp on these things, and this, and then he says he likes to suck on them a little bit, yada yada. Sure, maybe that was a little bit too much personal detail, but it tells you how you eat something is going to tell you how you enjoy it. Like, if you smell the wine before you drink it, I mean, you're going to be different than somebody's like, I drink as much as I can, so I get as drunk as fast as I can. So,
that's a good point. I'm working on a sugar rush.
Yeah, exactly.
I think he had a very ambitious idea. I don't know if it came off the way he wanted to. And further research looks like the M&M guy was inspired by the Spanish Civil War candies the soldiers were eating there. So, yeah.
Well, look at the new Candyman over there.
Yeah, look at that. He's the Candyman. Next video you have, I want to see a striped shirt. I want to see the vertical stripes going on.
I want you to look like Tony Todd.
That's different. That's a different Candyman.
You have to have bees coming out of his chest? That's a little bit much.
All right, now we're going to go to Zazubar, who reviewed Batman Beyond Return of the Joker, previously reviewed by myself.
I'm a big fan of Batman. And today, we're going to be reviewing one of the very roots of my love for The Dark Knight. Batman Beyond is kind of like white chocolate. No, I'm serious. It's a different version of a classic character, Batman, while white chocolate is a modified version of classic chocolate, which everyone is familiar with. Now, there are people who may criticize or even completely ignore this new version of a classic because in their eyes, it isn't actually what it claims to be. Some people claim that white chocolate isn't real chocolate, and some people claim that Terry McGinnis isn't actually Batman.
Oh, more Batman. I'm glad I like Batman.
Yeah. Exactly.
I can never get enough Batman, so I can't complain about that.
Yeah,
Again, just like a lot of the, at least, pretty much most of them had some sort of cool or just fun sort of opening gag, and Zazar had that as well. And it's nice to see him on camera for the first time. I never seen him in any of his videos before, so that was kind of cool. His analogy at the beginning, and I think that really worked well for this video as well, which is again his standard kind of open up with a general point and use that to segue into to more specific about his thing. I think it still works here, although I will point out that white chocolate isn't actually chocolate at all. That's just factually stating there it's not chocolate. So
some people would say that Batman Beyond is not Batman at all.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean,
I don't agree with those people, but they would say that.
Yeah, but I mean, at least that's more of an opinion thing, whereas white chocolate is factually not made of chocolate. So, but I still think it's a pretty apt analogy. So I'm not gonna rag on him for that. I think he could have used a couple of more retakes. There were a few parts where he stuttered through it and had to do like a repeat of himself that I think needed to be. Since this is obviously a scripted review for him, I think he needed to go back and do that one again. And there was just one spot later on, or a couple of spots later on, where there were just like a couple of seconds of just dead air that I think he needed to bring together a bit tighter. I mean, obviously when you're editing audio that might not necessarily be all in one take, you have to worry about not jumping on your own lines, which I think it's happened before in this contest. I know that SXE Blues got onto you, Captain Logan, for that in his video. So he had.
We're always opening ourselves up for our contestants to get onto us about stuff.
Yeah. So he had the opposite problem. He should have clipped out a little bit of that because there was some dead air in there, and it was like, okay, what happened to the review? Here, this is a difficult review for me to review, because he had some really amazing points, I thought, and he did veer off in his own direction. There were a lot of points though where I felt like it did feel like a remix of Captain. Again, as I watched them back to back, and it felt like a lot of the points were the same points in the same order. It felt like a repeat of Captain Logan's review. I'm not saying that's all there was to it, because that would be severely not giving Zazar enough credit, because there are a lot of times where he would start in the same kind of direction and the same point that Captain Logan did with his, and go off in a completely new direction, bring in some amazing new insight that wasn't even mentioned in the Superhero Rewind. And again, I know the point of this challenge wasn't to just be able to compare yourself to the previous review, but at the same time, I don't want it to be just the exact same review all over again. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a point of doing it. But so he did have some a lot of good stuff in there. Like an example of what I was just saying is that he opens up pretty much the same way that Captain Logan does with the opening scene, the action sequence through there, but he doesn't exactly take the same tack as Captain Logan does. He talks about Terry's one-liners and how he saves people. It takes time out of the catching crime fighters catching crime doers, not crime fighters, to save people from dying. But even some of the screen caps seem like about the same kind of stuff that Captain Logan used, and they're not the exact same ones, but I think he's happened to choose almost the exact same moments, the exact same screen grabs. But it was a very well constructed, pretty thorough review. I just think that it didn't necessarily stand on its own as something that was unique to him. And I guess one more nitpick is there was one line that I think needed to be rewritten. It was like he went in to hurt him where it really hurts, and that needed to be redone. But in general, I thought it was a pretty good review. I think it needed to stand more on its own.
I think Zazar is sort of a natural on how to review something. I think he knows that there are certain things that need to be talked about. The trouble is that I find that I don't really feel that he knows his material well. And when I say material, I don't necessarily mean the movie. I feel like he knows the movie pretty well. I feel like he demonstrates that he really understands, what happens in this movie and who these people are. But there are certain aspects of plot and character that I don't think that Zazar fully comprehends the implications of what plays into those things. And one of the things that I sort of feel like one of the big points that he made about early on establishing Terry's character was that he saves people, and that's really only sort of half composed. I mean, it's not it doesn't really tell us much about him other than the fact that he is a superhero, and maybe he cares more than Batman. Maybe that's the point. But I sort of felt like he was he's trying to come up with things, and he says this is an early indication. Well, really it's not, because it's the genre film. I mean, you can have a character who's completely flat that still adheres to the genres, the genre necessitates.
And Vince, isn't that especially important with Batman Beyond, given that Terry gets paid?
Yeah, I mean,
he's one of the only superheroes I can think of that actually gets a paycheck.
Yeah, I mean,
that's interesting. I never thought about that. Thanks for that.
I mean,
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, unless Bruce doesn't actually pay him. Oh, peanut M&Ms were introduced in 1954. Thanks, Lance.
No problem.
It was wow. What was I talking about? Okay, it's always talked about that it's Terry's job, because that's how he gets around. Telling his mom where he's been and everything. That he works for Mr. Wayne. But I'm assuming he actually gets a paycheck. So that's a really interesting point.
Yeah, I do think that Zazar knows enough about the movie. Like, for example, he picks out the catalyst for Terry's method of defeating the Joker. So we know that he understands the movie, and we know that he understands what happens where, he can pick out a plot point even if he doesn't necessarily understand that is the plot point. If he doesn't understand the lingo, I just feel like sometimes he doesn't understand what is important to a particular character. I think sometimes he gets a little fixated and says, oh, this is what's important because this is really interesting. Well, sure, he saves people, but that's not what makes Terry an interesting character. I mean, part of the reason why he's not the real Batman is because he's still a kid. I mean, if he didn't have the suit, he wouldn't really have the ability to defeat superpowered criminals. And maybe now I'm starting to review the film, and that's not fair to him. But and maybe it's not fair for me to judge the film while he's judging the film. But I didn't feel like it was. Well, let me say this. Let me move on to another point. I feel like I'm belaboring that. I do think he's a capable guy. The fact that he talks about the rock music, and I feel, and Cap talked about the rock music, I understand. But I sort of feel like the inclusion of the rock music and not mentioning that Terry's a younger guy, even younger than Batman initially was, or the original Batman when he started, or at least I think he was, without mentioning Terry's age and the rock music. I mean, it's one way, it's this like eternal effort to try to make the DC universe and everybody else younger. So I think that would have been an interesting thing to touch upon. That was it was right there. I mean, it was dogtailing the review, and I think that should have been something that he should have mentioned, but it's not necessarily necessary.
I think it's a decent review. I was impressed with some of the things that he caught that I didn't. I like that he mentioned Mark Hamill voicing the character of Price as well as the Joker.
Oh, I meant to mention that too.
How that helps throw the audience off. I don't remember if I mentioned this in my review, but one of the things that was a little bit unfortunate about Return of the Joker is that the producers talk about it in a commentary, is that they had planned on making Price a bigger deal, and he's so much in the background that's a character that I never even thought about much while watching the movie, so I didn't really see him as a red herring at all. But a lot of people did catch that, and then when he went far enough to say, oh, and Mark Hamill voiced him, and that helps throw you off. I liked it. That was good. He mentioned a lot of things that I either didn't mention or had never even thought of before. That was really great. This is going to maybe sound unfair. I hope it doesn't. I'm not real sure about how he opens it. I'm not sure that if you're going to do an unbiased, objective analysis, and I felt like he was trying to do an in-depth analysis, that it wasn't just a straight, overarching movie review, that there was some analysis in it. I feel like if you're going to do that, setting yourself up as a Batman fanboy is maybe not the way to go. I don't know if that's mean. I don't mean to be. I just feel like he spends so much time at the beginning talking about how much he loves this movie before he gets into the analysis, and he starts off, wearing a bat suit. It's funny, I suppose, although I do have to also say that puts me off quite a bit. This is just a personal thing. It puts me off when I see somebody, do the wearing a bat suit thing in a review just because everybody does it. It's become almost a cliche now. If you review something Batman, you got to wear a bat suit. I don't know what that's about, but it always kind of throws me off. I'm like, oh, this is going to be one of those I love Batman reviews, and there's not going to be anything in it. That's not fair, because there is a lot in this, and he does have some criticism. Although he had the same problem I had when I reviewed it, which was I don't have a lot bad to say about it. When he got to the end, he said my one criticism, and his one big criticism was my one big criticism. Sometimes reviewers are going to align like that. I think I would have. As far as choices go, it was a fine choice. It was something he knew a lot about. We always talk about having authority, and he has authority on this. That's why he picked it. For me personally, it would have been a lot of fun to have seen him review something of mine or Vince's or both of us together that he completely disagreed with us on. That would have been really fun. But that could be said of any of these guys. I don't think anybody this week reviewed something that they had huge disagreements with the other person who reviewed it. It would have been fun to have seen that. But anyway, so I'm not saying that he was like really biased in how he actually reviewed it. I just think he set himself up in a way to where he kind of shot himself in the foot a little bit, where somebody could have watched the first 2 minutes and went, "Oh, he's biased. He's just a Batman fanboy. I don't want to listen to this. There's not going to be anything of merit, in it. There's not going to be any substance." There was substance. I just think it would be easy for somebody to make that assumption. I think that his points are somewhat disorganized. I think this goes a little bit into something that Lance said earlier, that it didn't feel like it stood on its own real well as its own review. I did feel like it was patterned too much off of mine. I agree with Lance. I'm not sure that I had the same thing Lance did, where it felt like it was just like my review again with a few other things mixed in, but it did feel like he was addressing some very specific things, and it didn't feel like a full piece, really. It felt like it was a review of the parts he wanted to talk about. And that frankly was kind of a criticism that SXE Blues had of my Batman Begins reviews. I mean, I do it too. but that is a criticism I'd give of this, is that I'm not sure this would stand alone real well had you not seen my review before it. And I don't love that about it. But again, his point's really valid. He had a lot of things to say that I didn't say. But again, it was a little bit disorganized. Good spot.
As to some credit to Geekvolution, and to you, Cap, I actually went out of my way and I didn't watch your initial review of this because I had a feeling that your review was going to be too strong, that I was going to start doing some serious comparisons between the two. So I actually, unlike the other challenges, I made a point to watch his first.
Oh, okay.
And then I went back and I watched yours later. I just had a bad feeling that if I watched yours first, I was going to do a lot of comparisons, and I was going to say, okay, well, Geekvolution didn't do it in their video, or they did do this and he left it out. So I
actually made sure not to rewatch mine at all. It's been I think a year and a half since I did that. I remember a few things I said, but I didn't actually rewatch mine at all.
So I did want to go to his review with a clean slate and just kind of look at it for the content and how he approached it. I felt like his review did need some opener because it's really hard to do a narrative over a still review without doing something at the beginning to break it up and something at the end to kind of cut or wrap it up without it going directly to I really like this movie and ending on a still. So I felt like an intro or something different would have been crucial, and I'm glad he did it in the beginning, but I did feel like it was probably either a last-minute rushed idea, okay, I've got a suit, I can quickly do this. Like, I don't think he went out and bought the suit solely for the review, but I don't know, it just kind of felt a little hokey to me, the fact that he went that route, that he couldn't have done something different to start the review. And I
think the review's too intelligent for that.
Yeah, very much so, because I was going to say Zazibar's review is probably one of my favorite reviews of this challenge, that I thought, he had a couple of stumbling blocks that Vince had pointed out, but I thought as a whole, like, his narrative was really done well. He had enough stills that, because, the hard part with a lot of narrative over stills is they don't do enough stills that or they go back to the same pictures, or I find he didn't do that. So to a credit to him, he did that really well, but exactly what Cap just said, like, he almost shot himself in the foot by doing kind of that silly intro for what ended up being a really solid review. And unfortunately, some detriment to his video, it was one of the first videos that I watched when the contestants posted their video. So I didn't get a chance to re-watch this video just before we did the deliberations. Did he actually cover the director's cut?
He didn't even mention it.
Well, see, that's something that I would have done if I wanted to separate. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was saying, it's good you mentioned that, because didn't he use specifically the director's cut box in his video?
He did, which means he was taking stills from that particular cut, yeah.
But
he didn't talk very much at all about the parts that would have been changed. You know what I mean? Like exactly. He didn't cover the flashback stuff nearly enough.
Exactly, and I think where he would have really separated himself
for a lot of the meat of that movie
from Geekvolution was the fact that he could have done the comparison between the two formats of that movie. I mean, certainly the real crucial one is the death of Joker at the beginning, how it varied from him, he got electrocuted versus getting shot by was Tim Drake. So I would have liked to see that, where he had stepped away from and then brought his own material to the review. But still, all things considered, I thought it was done really, really well. I mean, it's such a hard thing, like what Cap and I think what Lance has also said, was the fact that I love this movie so much. It is one of my favorite Batman movies, and it's hard to go into it critiquing it myself, because I enjoy the movie so much as a fan as well. But I thought as a whole he did a very good job. I just really didn't like the intro. He probably could have done something a little bit better.
Well, if nobody else has anything else on that one, we'll go ahead and move on to the Curious Lowe's review of Black Swan, which was previously reviewed by The Real Manos.
Hello, it's the Curious Low here with another review. With awards season fading quickly in our review mirrors, I decided I wanted to review one of my favorite Oscar nominees from last year, Black Swan. Black Swan follows a professional ballerina, Nina, played by Natalie Portman, who has just been given the chance of a lifetime to play the black and white swans in a production of Swan Lake. As she prepares for her upcoming performance, she begins to come unhinged. She starts to suspect that one of the other dancers, Lily, played by Mila Kunis, is out to get her and steal the coveted role. The stress to be perfect slowly drives Nina to a dark place that could ultimately destroy her. When I first went to see this movie, I knew almost nothing about it. I was excited only because I knew it was about ballet, and I'm a professional dancer.
To this, I have to say yes. There's obviously...
What was the question?
All right, Vince, go ahead, buddy.
Yay! So, no.
To this review, I say yes. Moving on.
I say yes. We can go on now. No, there is. I've had an interesting relationship with the Curious Lowe's videos up to this point. I guess that's no surprise, no secret. I really loved her audition video, and to me, nothing she had done since up to this point matched up to just how thorough she was in those 2 minutes. There was always something. I never felt like it dived deep enough, or there was some sort of glaring inaccuracy in it that nothing past her audition video, which I loved and voted really highly, just never matched up, in my opinion. But this one, I can finally say, yes, this is exactly what I've been waiting to see from the Curious Low this entire contest. It's definitely different from what she's visually from what she's done before. She's off camera for most of it, which I'm not necessarily saying is bad that she was on camera before. I've always liked that about her, but I think that it's interesting she did differently. And if you look at Manos's video of this, his is entirely on camera. I think it's interesting that she went almost entirely off camera for her version of this. And what I find interesting is she did something that complements his video really well, but watching them together. His was I'm pretty sure was right after release kind of video. It's an impression of, I saw this movie and here's what it is you need to know about going into this movie, whereas hers done later is much more of just feels complimentary to that, as in you have a movie that's been out for a while and you're able to sort of have that perspective of time on it. Both of them can stand alone. That's sort of the problem I had with Zazubar's, was that his didn't feel completely independent of Captain Logan's, whereas the Curious Low's is extremely in-depth on its own, and you could watch it easily by itself and never have to see the real Manos' review at all. But at the same
Did she ever mention Manos in hers?
I don't think she'd mentioned him at all.
I don't think she did either, and I don't think she has to.
No, it's like you can watch this video completely by itself and never feel like you're missing anything. But at the same time, if you do watch them together, they actually complement each other very well and cover different things and different styles. She's very in-depth with this, something I felt was lacking in some of her earlier videos, not all of them, but some of them. But at the same time, she also has a personal connection to this, which makes it feel more hers than it otherwise would have been. That she is a dancer herself. I've taken a semester of ballet in college. That's the extent of my ballet knowledge. So I can't really speak on behalf of that.
You know more than I do.
It manages to take the best elements of hers, and bring in some of the things I thought she was lacking as well. And I honestly think this is the best video she has put forth in this contest so far. Definitely the most polished. I have to say that actually it's funny because I think ReviewSpot just brought this up. Is that the sort of pitfall in doing still image reviews is the tendency to fall back on the same image over and over again, and she does do that. There is I can recall a couple images that seem to cycle through over and over again, as well as a couple of posters. But that's just small potatoes compared to the fact that she did this one really much more in depth than I could have hoped for. Every from the dancing to the plot to the characters, really got in touch with what makes this movie tick.
I enjoyed this review. She demonstrates a good understanding of motive, which is really interesting. That she picks these things out of the movie. She points out little character subtleties. So I found her grasp of the movie, because that's what we call them. I found her grasp of the movie to be very adequate, and her insight as a dancer is extremely welcome. And it not only gave her more authority, but it felt like she had a personal stake in this movie. Having seen the movie, I felt like, thinking back on it, I could put myself in her shoes because of this review. I could extend myself to what she was feeling when she was seeing these people who, were ultimately damning themselves during this film. And it was really interesting. And, she has a good point about problematic cliches and archetypes, which is something that I had a problem with the movie with, which made it less enjoyable for me. The movie, not the review. And, I do think this is her best review so far. There's one thing that I found, this isn't necessary, as I said before, necessarily necessary, but I don't understand why people find the movie enjoyable. Now, I get why people think it's good. I understand that. And she does present a case that says this movie's good. And I do agree with her. I just don't feel like she told us as to why it's enjoyable. I mean, why do you want to see somebody slowly and then rapidly make their life, horrible. I mean,
now, did she come right out and make the case that it's a good time?
Well, no, she didn't, and that's why I'm saying is why would a person really enjoy somebody that's just you can't sympathize with? And
well, I guess the question then is just that: do you have to enjoy a movie, or can it just be because I feel like she was definitely telling us why we should watch it.
Yeah, and that's why I said this isn't exactly necessary.
That's just a really good point. I wouldn't have even thought of that.
So she tells me it's good, but I'm not exactly enticed to go see it. So, yeah, she's not selling it to me. She's telling me about it, and had I not seen the movie, I'd say she probably made some really good points, but I really don't care if I go see that movie.
Yeah, that's just the experience I had with it. I was really impressed with her analysis, but yeah, I didn't have a great desire to watch it. The thing is, I felt like she was doing something very different from Manos, just like Lance said. Manos's reviews of movies when they come out are very much, am I recommending this? Am I not recommending it? I watch most of Manos' new movie reviews because they help me decide whether to see things, and that's what they're designed to do. I felt like hers was much more of a critical analysis. I don't think she was trying to sell the movie, or if she was, I was getting much more out of it of a literary analysis kind of vibe. And I thought that she looked very deep into it, especially with the minimalistic. I mean, with the minimized time that she had, because she had to match Manos, so she only had about 7 minutes. I felt like she could have said a lot more had she had more time. I mean, like, I was impressed enough with it. I would have liked to have seen her 15-minute review of this movie. I'm gonna. What's that?
So there's quite a lot of layers to the film. So yeah, she was very concise for what it was, for what she had to work with, rather.
I'm going to give her and other folks who are doing reviews like this a quick pointer about editing. This is my big superhero rewind secret. Here's how I do rewind with the stills. People ask me this all the time, not knowing how to get stills out of things. Here's currently, I've used different programs. Here's currently what I use. Download VLC movie player.
That's what I use.
VLC is and a lot of computers I think just have it, but it's a player that on your desktop will have like a little road cone. That's what it has. It's VLC player. It has a screen grab program. What you want to do is it sounds tedious until you get it down, because you don't have to just go through your movie and find your screen grabs. You can just take them while you're watching the film. That's what I do. What you do is you set up a hotkey. You can set up any hotkey you want to, so you don't have to click the button with your mouse. And then as you're watching the film, just periodically push that button, and it will automatically take screen grabs and put it in a folder for you. And at any point you think that you're watching a scene that you're going to want grabs from, you just periodically hit that button. I usually take anywhere between 500 and 1,000 pictures. Or more, and that gives me a wide variety of things to choose from. It puts it in the order of the film, so of course it's pretty easy to find once you've just watched the movie. You have a sense of what happened when, and then of course when you're done, you just delete them from your computer. And it also lets you use a whole lot more shots than you can when you're just taking things from Google image search or something like that. I was very distracted. That was the biggest problem I had with it. I was really distracted by the shots that were reused, and also the blurriness of some of the pictures that she had to take from Google because she couldn't get high resolution images, and that was unfortunate because the narrative was so good. I felt like if she had been able to get just her own screen grabs, it would have been much stronger, because there would have been more to look at, and I would have understood more of some of the things she was talking about having not seen the film, because she could have shown me very specific scenes. It felt like she was probably frustrated in some places where she couldn't find screen grabs that went with the scenes she was talking about. So that's how you do that. I agree with everything Vince said. I just thought it was a really good critical analysis. This is once again a new format she's trying. She's been trying out new formats. It's a little bit late in the game to be messing with different formats, especially since you're reviewing a movie again. What she usually seems to like is things with narrative, and she keeps experimenting with different styles. I think, and again, that's not a huge criticism, but I think that this is the best one she's tried, and I think she should stick with it if she can do this, if she can get her own stills. That's what I would suggest. The whole, being on screen at the beginning, being on screen at the end, and then putting us deep, deep into the film through the rest of it. I was impressed. I too think that it's her best review. Just work on those visuals. You've got a great review. Good spot.
I thought Curious Low, as it was mentioned already, I'm not sure who mentioned it, but I think she did really own this particular review. I think some mild critiques I probably would make is it did seem very obvious that she either didn't have the proper software to maybe pull proper screen grabs, or she was pulling those screen grabs from the internet, and maybe she just didn't have enough available to fill out the review. I thought what she used was fine, but I always find that unless you're talking, maybe whenever you mention the name of the movie, you can then show a poster of the movie. But when you're just talking about storyline, I always think going back to a poster, especially too because posters aren't usually formatted for, unless you do get like a poster wallpaper, they're not formatted usually for a wide screen view. They're always, of course, like the narrow strip. So it's always jarring watching like image stills of screen grabs where they're stretched to fit a wide screen, and then all of a sudden it cuts to a panel poster shot. But I thought like this as a narrative, I think this was probably some of her best work. And again, trying the new change in her style, I think was a gamble, as Captain had mentioned this far into the challenge. But I think it really paid off for her. I would say she did a really good job. Maybe the only other thing I would suggest is her on-camera work seemed like it might have been a last-minute addition. Like she probably wasn't planned for doing it. Or it didn't look like she was probably ready available to do the on-camera. It just seemed like it was quickly thrown in, and she always seems like she's done really, really well. Like, I don't want to start critiquing how somebody looks on camera, but
his spot's like, comb your hair more.
Yeah, well, no, but it seemed like with her other challenges when she's been on camera,
she looked fine.
I know.
I'm kidding. Go ahead.
It does seem like she didn't like prepare herself enough for the on camera, even though she had everything that she wanted to say. But I also like the fact that what Vince had mentioned, that she went into the review with an invested interest. I've never seen the movie. I keep wanting to see the movie, but some people say don't see the movie, some people say you should see the movie. But it did seem like she was speaking from somebody that had interest in it, not solely as a watcher, but somebody that could relate to it. Probably everything that everybody's already covered off. I think this is probably one of her better, if not best, reviews.
Anybody have any extra points or rebuttals?
Yeah, I'd like to say one more thing I forgot.
Sure.
Lance touched on this earlier, but I'd like to say that the fact that she did something different than what Manos did, or maybe it was Cap that pointed this out. Anyway, the fact that she did something different than what Manos did, and she still made a very solid review, I think that's really the essence of what this particular challenge was about.
I agree.
It's review something that they did, not do the review that they did again. So, kudos.
Actually, can I just add something else to that, too?
Sure.
I also like the fact, too, that something that I've critiqued her on for every single challenge was not so much that her reviewing style was weak, but the fact that every challenge she kind of approached it with the same means, the same format, the same style. It was very refreshing to see that differently this time around. So I'm glad she almost, saw that she could do something more than simply being on camera holding, the DVD or, which I think I already mentioned, but.
And if I could add one more thing too, since we're all doing this, I guess, in this one.
I have nothing else to say. Whatever. Go ahead.
I just want to add to the tech tips that Cap was giving out a minute ago. If you're going to use this is something I always find useful to make something more visually interesting when I'm doing stills. If you're going to use a movie poster, find as high a resolution version of that image as you can, and then you can zoom in on it really tight and pull back out. And that's a lot more visually appealing than just having, as Review Spot said, an image that doesn't come close to fitting the size of the screen.
Or sometimes what I'll do, like if I ever want a wallpaper for my desktop, I might just type in, whatever movie it is, and then wallpaper. And then generally there are a lot of, internet site kind of like posters that are just a bigger version of a movie poster that still has the credits and everything below. She could probably maybe look that up as well.
Yeah, it's like just because you do stills doesn't mean it has to be just that image on that screen. I mean, you can get creative with it. You can do zooms and pans, and she's done that before, so I know she can. So
yeah, she's got the software for it.
Yeah.
Well, let's go ahead and go on to the top banana now, shall we? And we're going to start with Lance. Lance, who would you like to vote this time for top banana?
As usual, it's difficult for me to narrow stuff down. There are a couple that I could very easily choose for top banana. But I think, and this is going to be thrilling, I'm going to have to vote for the Curious Low.
Vince?
Yeah, I agree. I vote for the Curious Low.
Well, I know I'm probably completely in the minority on this.
I
don't know. I'm voting for SXE Blues. I was really impressed with it. Spot.
Well, I'm actually going to add on to it as being the odd man out, because I'm actually going to go with Zazar. I know you guys are probably like, what is Zazar? You know what? For me, it's like I'm looking at people that have been generally strong with every single challenge, and then it's like, like Curious Low. I've always had a very high level of respect for the kind of videos that she's doing. But then, you have SXE Blues, who you have seen progressively get better and better and better. I'm also then looking at, I'm also factoring that in with Zazar, because I'm looking at something that I generally have been kind of on the fence with his material, but it wasn't so much the fact I really like this movie, but I thought he did a pretty good job with the structure, the stills, and everything else. The only thing I really critiqued was like the opener. But I mean, that aside, I thought he did a pretty good review with what he did. I mean, so I'm actually going to say Zazar. I'm going to be the odd man out. I'm going to say Zazar.
Well, you think you're the odd man out, but in fact, the real Manos also voted for Zazar.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and so that's going to put Zazar and Curious Low as tied for top banana this week. I don't have all the notes about why Manos chose Zazar, so he can tell us later, but Manos chose Zazar. And so now, congratulations to you two. You're the top bananas this week. Well done. Going into the second to last challenge. And now, it's time as always for the inevitable vote-off. Cue depressing music.
I was going to say, do we have the depressing music ready?
Oh, of course it's going. Can you hear it?
No, I can't, but I'm sure it's going to be there.
It's there. It's there. I can hear it, but I know what it is, so it's just in my head right now. Lance?
This is always my very least favorite part.
It's not fun.
Those deliberations. I always hate doing it. Just so the contestants always know that I never like doing this part. I would take you all home with me and give you cookies if I could, but no, I gotta send one of you home, and it's makes me sad. Especially when you get to this point in the competition where it gets even harder to choose. I'm afraid I'm gonna have to cast my vote for DPSTQ2. Just a little bit unfocused. Just didn't quite measure up to the rest of the competitors this week.
Vince.
I will also vote for DPSTQ2. I think that he made a risk, and I can applaud risk taking, but I think it's a little late in the game. And I think early on, it's great to try things when you have a little bit of padding. But and I realized that Curious Low did something a little different than she usually does, but she'd also toyed with it earlier, as well as SXE Blues has toyed with his earlier. And I'm not saying that people shouldn't try things. I'm just saying it's a risk that didn't work out for him.
Yeah, Vince, I completely agree with you. I'm also going to vote off DPSDQ too. We always talk about risk taking. We always say attempt the thing you don't always do whenever you can. And the problem with that, of course, is that it just doesn't always work out. It seems to me like he wasn't real comfortable doing the topic that he had that he ended up doing, and it showed through too much. And so that's unfortunately why I have to vote him off. Good spot.
I guess I'm not the odd man out on this one. I'm actually also going to go with dpsdq. I feel bad because I feel like he went into this challenge picking somebody that he probably didn't want to do, and it just seemed to me like I don't know. It just felt to me like he didn't really want to do the review, and it just showed for me, and it could have.
Yeah, again, props for going ahead and trying it.
Yeah, I give him all exactly, because I mean, it's hard going into a realm that you're maybe not used to doing. So I give him credit for trying, but it just seemed like it definitely was not his strongest review.
I don't feel like we saw the dpsdq2 M&M review. I feel like we saw what he thought you would expect him to see doing a review that the Review Spot did.
And usually his material is quite heavy. Like there's enough beefy content to his review that I'm really surprised he didn't go and bring in more content to like the history of the M&Ms, all the stuff that we mentioned earlier.
And finally, Manos also voted off dpsdq2. So unfortunately, dpsdq2 is no longer with us. We appreciate you coming on to the show and all of your fine work. We had a lot of fun watching you. So anyway, sorry to see dpsdq2 go. We're down now to the last three guys.
Wow. The last three guys?
Wow, yeah, isn't it? Well, no, the last three, gentlemen. And isn't it exciting? Isn't it exciting? Going into round 6. Let's go ahead and talk about our next challenge. This is the strangest challenge we've ever done on Who Reviews the Reviewers. Originally the plan, let me just mention, was going to be to have everybody do the same thing we did last year, where we were going to have them all do a Skype call. I'm a little bit worried that at least one of them wouldn't have the technology to do the Skype call, which is why I decided to change it at the last minute. And so what we're going to do is actually something based, believe it or not, this challenge is based on something that Lance suggested last year in his review of Who Reviews the Reviewers.
Oh, wow.
I've not told any of the guys about this yet.
Can't wait to see what this is.
Well, one of the things that Lance critiqued about Who Reviews the Reviewers last year was that our challenges weren't specific enough. And he suggested, somewhat jokingly, that maybe sometimes we could just put random arbitrary things into some of the challenges. And he had an amusing idea with reviewing an album, but maybe it should be between this length and this length, and maybe it should have red in it, and there should be a monkey in it. Yes, exactly. Well, basically, we're doing that. I thought...
Are there monkeys?
You'll see. I'm going to tell you in a second. I thought it would be fun. Now that we've got 3 people left, I thought, let's just have a really fun challenge. Let's do something totally out there. So this I'm calling the arbitrary criteria round. And the focus on this one, of course, is creativity and ingenuity. I'm going to give you some random things that you have to put in your video. And the idea is to see how seamlessly you can integrate these criteria into your review, so that if somebody watched it who didn't know what the criteria were, they wouldn't even notice it. It just fits and works in the review. Even though they're random, they should feel like they're not random. They should feel like they totally belong. So we're going to see how creative people can be with this. Again, as always, be critical, objective, entertaining, and interesting. You don't want these things to pop out and that be the review, but you will get huge points taken off if all of these things are not included somewhere in your video. So, here are the criteria. First of all, it's gonna be a film review, because all 3 of the people that we have left are people who enjoy reviewing films, and I thought let's let them review what they like, especially since we're gonna make them do all kinds of crazy other things. So you're gonna review a film, but your film must begin with the letter M. And articles don't count, so it can start with V or A or N, but the main title must begin with the letter M.
Dial M for murder doesn't count because it starts with a D.
Because it starts with dial. Yes, dial is not an article adjective. It's just a regular word. It must include a clear reference to one of your 2 remaining opponents.
Wow.
There must be a reference to one of your other opponents in your review somewhere that we can pick out. It must include the color red, and it must show a monkey on screen.
Yes! A real monkey?
No, just a monkey somewhere, but it must be on screen, not just a mention. There must be a monkey. And finally, the last thing is, it must include an interesting or amusing tidbit that you found somewhere other than Wikipedia. And the source must be cited.
Ooh. That might be the hard part.
Those are the criteria. The time limit is 10 minutes.
Nice.
We're going to let this one be a little bit longer, so that you can really dive into whatever movie you're doing. And since you got all these other weird things you got to do, at least you won't have to worry too much about time. So 10 minutes, and the due date is Friday, April the 6th. Going to give you a couple extra days on this one. Does anybody have any questions or anything you'd like to add to it?
I'd like to say that for your sources, don't sell your library short. You'd be surprised how many libraries have a film section. And I don't mean like DVDs. I mean like books about film.
I thought it would be really fun to see what people came up with for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other
This
comments?
is definitely going to be an interesting challenge.
Yeah. I think it'll be fun. Hopefully, that was the idea. And we'll see what people come up with. I can't wait. So once again,
do Curious George and Dunstan checks in and all that stuff.
Those don't start with M's.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, but we might see some of those monkeys in the reviews. You know, it could happen. I actually didn't even do that on purpose. It wasn't like M because of monkey. I don't know. I arbitrarily picked M. And then...
is there a movie called Monkey?
I don't know. I'm sure there's
Monkey Shines.
Yeah, I was about to say there's that.
Well, anyway. Thanks a lot, everybody, for watching and listening to Who Reviews the Reviewers. We appreciate everybody watching the show. Thanks to all the contestants. We're having a good time, as always, going through these. And we'll see you again very soon. I'm Captain Logan.
I'm Mr. Air Fusion.
I'm Vince.
I'm the Review Spot.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.